Dating from 1886, the Malvern Town Hall is probably one of the most iconic buildings in the area, and it's within 2 kilometres of here that some of the most important developments in Australian media began. 3 streets west of here is Stewart Street, the site of an experiment launched in the Whitlam government's dying days. In 1975, the front was a Laura Ashley dress shop. The walled-off rear was warehouse space. Leased to Melbourne's first community radio station, 840 kHz AM, with studios, transmitter and antenna on the roof. It looked different then, but so did I. The rear of 1112 High Street in Armadale. This for me was the start of a career that started through that door, which was the main entry door to the first studios of Radio 3CR Melbourne. This was really the start of community radio for the Melbourne area. There had been one FM station previously, 3MBS FM, which started at the end of 1975. Test transmissions began from here with the antenna on the roof and the transmitter in this building. In May 1976, the official opening was on July the 3rd, and I was there. A wide spectrum of community groups were initially involved. Community Aid Abroad, Brotherhood of St Lawrence, even Australia's official ham radio body. The transmitter was originally built in 1938 for the fire brigade at Eastern Hill. Tape recorders, for example, used for the Melbourne Olympics. Factions soon gave trouble. The program Palestine Speaks raised the ire of the Jewish Board of Deputies. Pressure was placed on the landlord to throw us out. Cynics noted that the antenna on the roof was painted red and that in their eyes it leaned to the left. 3CR went more radical, so I joined ABC Radio Talks. Up the back of the building was surplus gear. Today, 48 years since the station was forced to move to Collingwood, that scene is a rug shop. But less than 1 kilometre south, Victoria's very first radio station was built. George W. Selby, born 1857, died 1949. A wealthy accountant for BHP, a pioneer electrical experimenter and engineer. In 1886, he built his mansion at the corner of Alma Road and Khartoum Street, North Caulfield, just south of the Malvern boundary. He called it Yatma Kera, Aboriginal for temporary camp, but with its electrical workshop and surrounding acreage, it was far from temporary, as we'll see. Nothing now remains of it. It was demolished and subdivided in 1938, but Selby's electrical achievements make it an important historical site. July 1896, Selby, standing here, assembled an X-ray outfit only months after Röntgen's discovery. You could see the contents of his pocket and purse through the fluoroscope he constructed. 1897, Selby's eldest son, with Melbourne's first radio telegraph transmitter in the Yatma Kera driveway. Batteries feeding a spark coil, Morse key and interrupter. Photo from the Australasian, 11th September 1897. Selby's radio receiver, Leclanche wet cells under the table supplying a Morse sounder and an early wireless detector, a Branly coherer. Short-range antenna with 2 copper strips extended horizontally. A diagram from 1899 reveals that Selby had no means of tuning. The transmitting spark coil was simply attached to a 60-foot vertical antenna, a broad-banded transmission. The crude receiver had the Branly radio detector connected to a similar vertical antenna, also with no tuning. Luckily, Selby had the only local transmissions, otherwise they couldn't be separated from other signals. The coherer detector contained metal filings that became conductive when radio waves were applied to them.
Selby induced his Brighton-based civil engineer friend Calder Oliver to set up a station, and over 5 kilometres morsed an initial phrase, "What ho, she bumps," a naval term relating to bumpy seas, and one of the first hit songs on the gramophone.
She began to bump, a little bit, bump, 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 just a little bit. The fat man fell down the engine room. His wife was clinging to a great skip boom. She rolled about and fairly in the dump. I clung to the captain's bags and cried, "What ho, she bumped."
On 24th of June 1899, Selby demonstrated wireless between the HMVS Cerberus and Williamstown Naval Depot, his last wireless achievement. He sold his electrical gear in 1901 to concentrate on accounting.
This is number 9 Erskine Street in Malvern, the Melbourne base of the inventor Henry Sutton, one of the first people to propose a television system back as far as 1890. But between 1900 and his death in 1912, this was his base for his radio experiments, aided by a 102-foot Oregon mast that was built out the back of this property. And most of his work seems to have been done in that bay window room on the first floor.
His property originally extended to the next street, as shown on this MMBW map, ample room for antenna masts. Sutton began experimenting in Ballarat, but by the late 1890s his family music business was more easily managed from Melbourne, the home on the hill near Kooyong and Malvern roads. 1910. Sutton's radio transmitted morse from a high-voltage spark, but unlike Selby, he tuned his transmit frequency with the coil and capacitor on the left. But Sutton's receiver was a huge improvement over Selby's coherer, which could only operate a Morse relay. Instead, Sutton used dissimilar crystals in contact as radio detectors, and he fed the detected signals to a super-sensitive earphone. The sound of different ship transmitters could now be differentiated by ear. With Sutton's 30-metre high antenna, the receiver range shot up from 30 miles to around 5,000 miles. Via crystal detection, he could hear ships at Invercargill, Fiji, even the middle of the Indian Ocean. This semiconductor research led to the transistor amplifier almost 40 years later. By 1910, Sutton was also the first Australian to transmit radio speech rather than Morse, using this Poulsen arc with a carbon microphone modulator. He even built portable crystal receivers for short-range work, tested these with the Army at Victoria Barracks in 1908. Sutton died in 1912, but by the 1920s the famous crystal set had become the standard home receiver at the dawn of broadcasting. The technology was born here, 9 Erskine Street, Malvern. Another medium. By 1910, motion pictures disseminated local news via newsreels. So where would you expect that Malvern's first newsreel films would be taken? Perhaps behind this seemingly endless hedge in Glenferrie Road, a vestige of the amazing and important property of several hectares that it once concealed. At the Gatehouse, we were there to witness part of its progressive redevelopment into just under 100 residential properties. From 1901 to 1931, this was the residence of Victorian governors, the house that gave its name to the locality, Stonnington House. In 1910, the view east from the first floor balcony across sparsely settled East Malvern. Photographs indicate many important visitors to Stonnington before World War I, or at least they thought they were important. The Victorian Governor Thomas Gibson Carmichael and his wife Mary in the viceregal car. A list of the resident governors and some of their celebrity guests. Yet we didn't find any surviving newsreel taken here. Perhaps researchers could do some digging and locate some. Malvern's earliest known film was taken here, further north along Glenferrie Road, at Coldblow Road. Offices and tram sheds of the old Paran and Malvern electric tramway. The foundation stone names several people seen in the film of its opening. A few people in that 1910 film would soon give their lives for their country. The initial 1909 plan for this pioneering electric line ran along High Street, linking Paran railway station to the Chapel Street cable tram, then up to Malvern Town Hall. A dogleg south along Glenferrie Road led to the original terminus, Wattletree Road. October 1909, Paran's Mayor Naylor hammers in the first rail spike, and Malvern's Mayor Lewis makes the first Australian thermit, chemically assisted weld in the track. Malvern's earliest known film, The Tramway's Opening, brings these scenes to life in a manner that still photos never could. This panning shot duplicates the first scene of the 1910 film. Opening speeches were given from the predecessor of those metal fire escape stairs.